We're continuing the Onslaught build series here on the channel, going over some of the best builds to take into the Onslaught activity, and again, we are back on Titan. If you're a Warlock or Hunter main, I've already dropped some builds here on the channel, going over some options for you to take into Onslaught, and I'm going to make more builds throughout the entirety of the event. Let's not waste any time and dive right into it. Honestly, I did not think Stasis Titan was going to be good in Onslaught, but we made it into the 40 rounds easily with this setup. And to be honest, there's two exotics you can actually use with this build. The first one that I personally like, which is Armamentarium. Its perk and another thing, gain an additional grenade charge. Again, it's pretty basic, but there are a variety of bonuses we get from having double glacier grenades and breaking those crystals. And the other option would be the Hoarfrost Z. Its perk, Glacial Fortification. When using the Stasis subclass, your barricade becomes a wall of stasis crystals that slows nearby targets when created. Standing behind this barricade will grant you nearby allies increased weapon reload speed, stability, and range. This essentially turns your rally barricade into a glacial grenade, and so it'll have small ones in the middle where you can aim over it, but essentially the whole thing with this build is to have a lot of stasis crystals on the field, which is going to give us a variety of benefits and keep the enemy locked down. Under the Behemoth subclass, the Super Glacial Quake is actually pretty decent for this activity, allowing for very fast lockdown of entire areas. And I even at one point had both my teammates dead. There was a Tormentor up who still had health left. I just popped out a bunch of crystals, and every time you hit one, it would break and do shatter damage to him. And there's a way we can actually increase that with the artifact. But to be honest, I think the super is really underrated. Yes, you can't really use it for boss DPS in particular, but it does have some solid output. For abilities, I'm going with the Towering Barricade, but you can use Rally Barricade if you'd like, especially if you are using the Hoarfrost Z exotic. I personally like the Towering because I can just pop it, around the corner and the enemies have to run through it. They get disoriented, all of that great jazz. For movement, I like Strafe Lift, but you can use what you like. We only have the one melee, which is Shiver Strike, which we're really not going to be using by itself because of the aspects, which we'll talk about. And then for the grenade, I'm opting for the Glacial Grenade. For our aspects, first up, I'm using Howl the Storm. Again, this is based off of the melee. So while you're sliding, activate your charged melee ability to launch a wave of stasis energy forward that freezes targets and creates stasis crystal. This is going to be another way that we can create stasis crystals. And then the second one we're using is Tectonic Harvest. Shattering a stasis crystal creates a stasis shard. This shard grants melee energy when picked up by you and your allies. And even base-wise with stasis crystals, it gives you melee energy anyway, so there's going to be some cool benefits that we can have with Tectonic Harvest. For fragments, I'm using Whisper of Shards, so shattering a stasis crystal temporarily boosts your grenade recharge rate, and again, if we break more of them, it'll increase the duration of this benefit. So we get those from the Glacial Grenade, from the class ability, if we're using Hoarfrost Z, from Howl the Storm melee, and again, with all those stasis crystals that we're breaking, we get the grenade recharge rate. With Tectonic Harvest, we also get melee energy back, which means we can have Howl the Storm back very quickly on top of our grenades back pretty quickly. Next, I'm using Whisper of Change. While you're near frozen targets or a friendly stasis crystal, you take reduced damage from targets. It's a +10 to recovery. Essentially, this is extra damage resistance on top of the tier 10 resilience. I'm also using Whisper of Conduction, so those nearby stasis shards will actually track to me, and that's a +10 to resilience and intellect. And pairing that with Whisper of Rhyme is fantastic. So collecting stasis shards grants a small amount of overshield, which falls off after 10 seconds. Collecting additional shards adds to the overshield and refreshes the timer. So with all of these stasis shards we're creating, not only do we get melee energy back, but we also get an overshield as well. Under the artifact, I'm using both the stasis and solar perks that are available because we have really good combinations here, especially with stasis. Pillar of Ice, defeating a frozen target spawns a stasis crystal. We're going to be freezing a lot of targets anyway, so having more stasis crystals is going to be good. Again, with all the stuff that I previously mentioned, with having overshields, damage resistance, ability cooldowns, that one's going to be fantastic. And then with Hail the Storm, shattering frozen targets and stasis crystals deals increased damage, and then shattering stasis crystals releases shards of ice that damage and slow targets. With Hail the Storm, that's pretty much a substitution for something like Whisper of Frizzers, which pretty much does the exact same thing. So that's why I didn't include it, because Hail the Storm pretty much does the same thing. For the solar portion, highly recommend Flint Striker, so those rapid solar weapon precision hits and final blows will grant me Radiant, which gives me a couple of benefits. Number one, being Kindling Trigger, so any solar weapon that I have will apply Scorch to unscorched combatants. With Torch, while I'm Radiant, I deal increased weapon damage to combatants affected by Strand and Stasis debuffs. I'm going to be freezing a lot of targets on the field, and having that increased damage from a target that's frozen is literally free here. And then Raise of Precision while we're Radiant. Solar Precision Final Blows cause combatants to ignite. That is a free ignition on a headshot kill, and with, causing an ignition explosion around Stasis crystals that have increased shatter damage, you're pretty much just blowing up the entire battlefield with Solar and Stasis. For the other ones, I did toss on Blast Radius here since I am using a rock launcher, so if I get a multi-kill, I can gain armor charges, and I would recommend Wish into Being, so when your super energy is nearly fully charged, ability Final Blows will spawn Orbs of Power. And then Dragon's Bright. Again, this one has a small chance, but breaking a combatant shield with a strand or stasis weapon has a chance to suspend or freeze that combatant. And I am using a stasis weapon as my primary, so I want that slight chance, even though it might be small. Before we dive into armor mods, let's talk about what stats to focus on. So first up, always talk about every video, try to have tier 10 100 resilience. It's a 30% damage reduction, and we definitely want that for Legend Onslaught. And with the Titan in particular, this also is tied to how fast we can get our barricade back. And if you are using the Hoarfrost Z, that means you can get that wall of stasis crystals back even faster. Secondly, I would focus on discipline. Discipline is tied to how fast we can get that grenade back, and we want as many glacial grenades as possible to lock down areas and freeze a bunch of targets. You don't necessarily need to focus on strength, because with all of these stasis shards you're going to be creating that you can collect to get melee energy back, you can get it back extremely quickly. So you could focus on something like intellect, which is tied to how fast you can get that super back, but definitely resilience and discipline are the big two. On the helmet here, I am rocking Solar Siphon. Since I am using solar weapons, those rapid Final Blows will actually create Orbs of Power for me. Then I'm using Heavy Ammo Finder with Heavy Ammo Scout, so I can get more heavy ammo for me and my teammates. On the gauntlets here, I'm using Impact Induction with Momentum Transfer, so when I deal damage with my Powered Melee and my Grenade, it actually gives me cooldowns for both of those respectively. And with Bolstering Detonation, when I deal damage with my Grenade, it actually gives me class ability energy back, so this will be good for Hoarfrost Z. You could switch this out for something like Solar Loader if you wanted a faster reload for your solar weapons, so you have a couple options. For the chest piece, I am using Solar Reserve, so I get more solar heavy ammo, and then I just have on Void and Arc Resist, but you can switch these ones out for whatever the burn is for that day. On the boots, I'm using Recuperation, so I get health back each time I pick them in Orb of Power. Yes, I'll have increased damage resistance and overshield from crystals and stasis shards and whatnot, but I definitely want that extra health back from picking up orbs as a just-in-case means, especially in Legend. You definitely want this one on. And then I'm rocking double Solar Weapon Surge, so your solar weapons gain a small bonus to damage while you have any armor charge. Your armor charge now decays over time. Essentially, when you collect Orbs of Power, you gain armor charges. With this build, you can have a maximum of 3. With any of these blue mods, they last 10 seconds, which means at 3 armor charges, we have 30 seconds of this bonus weapon damage. And then lastly, on the class item, I'm rocking Time Dilation, so your decaying armor charge has a longer duration. So that 10 seconds that I mentioned actually gets bumped up to 15 seconds. So at 3 armor charges, we have 45 seconds of that bonus solar weapon damage. I do like Powerful Attraction, so automatically picks up nearby orbs when you activate your class ability. So this is, in particular, is pretty good with Hoarfrost Z, but I like it in general. And then lastly, I'm using Bomber, so it reduces your grenade cooldown when you use your class ability. You could potentially switch out Time Dilation for something like Reaper if you would like. So when you use your class ability, your next weapon Final Blow will spawn an Orb of Power, and that can be good with the Hoarfrost Z setup. But again, I like this setup. For your weapon options, in the primary slot, I would recommend a Stasis Fusion that can come with the perk Chill Clip. So direct hits with the top half of the magazine cause a detonation that slows nearby targets. So not only can this handle overload champions with the slow, if you get enough burst off on an unstop, it'll freeze them, so that can handle unstoppable champions. And if you're Radiant through Flint Striker, you can actually pop anti-barrier champions. So this one weapon can handle all 3 champion types. So if you have those Crucible engrams, definitely turn them in to see if you can get a solid Riptide roll. If you don't have one, you could look into Vow of the Disciple to get the Deliverance. This can also come with Chill Clip, and it is craftable. For your energy weapons, you can use your favorite solar primary. Again, I have this Epitol Integration. Incandescent, this thing is fantastic, especially for hand cannons this season. We can stop unstoppable champions, which I really like, but any weapon that can come with Incandescent is going to be pretty good. I have this crafted Adhortative with Incandescent. Same thing with the Defiant here, Incandescent. The Summoner, Adept with Incandescent. And again, autos and pulses can both handle overload champions. Not that it'll be necessary with the Chill Clip Fusion, but it's an option. Again, you have something like Callous Mini Tool. If you wanted to go exotic, you could go with Sunshot. Sunshot is fantastic for this activity. Again, with the crowd control aspects of having stasis crystals out there, freezing targets, and the extra explosions from Sunshot, it's a solid option. But the reason I like using a legendary in the energy slot is that it opens up my exotic slot. And personally, Gjallarhorn has been fantastic for crowd control. Yes, I know, not really solid, DPS numbers by itself, but this thing is fantastic for crowd control. You can catch enemies in their spawn, and the extra Wolfpack rounds take out everybody. You get a multi-kill, you also become Radiant, you can break your stasis crystals on top of that with this thing. So Gjallarhorn is fantastic. If you didn't want to use this, again, Dragon's Breath is a solid option. Again, the legendary department, Apex Predator, this thing's crafted. You can also use your favorite solar heavy weapon. I just really like Gjallarhorn. Sometimes if I go into a boss fight, I'll switch to Apex Predator, recon bait and switch, and then put on something like Sunshot for the boss room, then switch back for the waves. So you do have a couple of options here. If you think everything that I just talked about is complicated, I'm telling you right now, this build is just a no-brainer. in Onslaught. All you have to do is just use your abilities in tandem. Again, toss out those glacial grenades, use your uppercut melee Towel of the Storm, those stasis crystals that you are creating, break those, create stasis shards, give yourself overshield, give yourself ability energy back. You have really good crowd control. Hey, when you're being a little bit overwhelmed or your teammates are dead, pop that super, freeze the enemies in place, and stop them. You can freeze Shriekers with this. It's surprisingly, like I said in the beginning, stopping that Tormentor from getting close to the ADU and all the other enemies that were down that lane in Midtown, it was just fantastic to use. And there's just too many benefits with the Stasis subclass to not use this as something like Onslaught. Yes, you don't get the DPS numbers like you would with the Pyrogale build, which I've already dropped here on the channel, but the crowd control aspects with this setup are just absolutely insane. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is my Onslaught Stasis Titan build. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I'm actually going to put the dim link for this build in the description, so if you want to copy everything that I'm using, down to the subclass, the armor mods, the weapons, even the drip if you'd like, from shaders to orms and stuff like that. Try to make my Guardians look, you know, slightly presentable for the build that they're using. But test out for yourself and let me know if there's something that you like using on this build after testing. Definitely let me know in the comments. In any event, if what you saw is valuable or entertaining to you, be sure to drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on that bell next to notifications so you don't miss out on any of the upcoming Onslaught builds I'm going to be dropping on the channel. If you didn't know, we live stream here on YouTube, but also on Twitch and TikTok as well. So if you want help with Legend Onslaught, with the Whisper mission, with 0 Hour, anything that has to deal with this Into the Light event, we're definitely going to be carrying people throughout the entirety of the event. So if you do want some help, hop in the chat. We'll get you in the queue. But if you want to be proactive, join my Discord. That's where people are going to be chatting about Destiny 2, looking for groups. I made an Onslaught LFG role, so if you're looking to do Onslaught and get some other people in to help you, again, that's going to be a really good way to do that. Lastly, if you want to help support the channel even more so I can continue making content for you guys, you can look into becoming a member. If you don't know what a membership is essentially like a Twitch subscription, but it's cheaper than a Twitch subscription, hilariously enough. In any event, you're going to get access to exclusive emotes, monthly badges, and other cool things here on the channel, like early access to every single one of my videos. So if you want more information, all you have to do is press the join button, next subscribe, and that'll give you a rundown with all the details you need. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's been your boy. We'll catch you in the next one.